Is it working?
Yes.
Oh my god, this is so cool. Okay. Now I walk around and consolidate. Here. Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
So.
I'm wearing a headset because it's like trying out something new. I just bought it like a couple weeks ago. So
What is it?
it's a Meta Quest 3.
Okay.
And I can see the real world, like its pass-through and everything. Testing it out. Like we just got it working last night. What's your name?
Alora.
Delora?
Alora.
Oh, Alora. I'm Dieter. Or Deet, it's the nickname. But if you want to test and see if it's working, here's the QR code to see like what my view looks like from first person.
What's going on with this? Wait, I want to see like what it looks like. Where can I watch it?
You can go on the QR code.
Oh, I see it.
Is it working? Oh, let's go, it's working.
I see it. That's me. Standing in the back being like,
Yo,
what's happening?
let's go. It should be.
Actually look at myself?
Yeah, you get to see yourself, yeah.
So
yeah, it's the idea, the vision for us is kind of to make live streaming more immersive. So essentially, immerse yourself in the actual streamer's reality. And
we're in MIT Sandbox right now, working with a startup.
Heck yeah! So
the YC.
That's awesome. Hell yeah! Good job. We just built it in like a day, so it's very MVP stage. Oh, just
we're
1,000.
actually not counting.
No, I'm just
He's
kidding.
trolling.
No, there's nothing. Nobody cares. We're not big. Yeah.
We're just streaming onto our.
I lost. Yeah.
I was looking, I just didn't know.
Oh, what's your name?
Jack.
Dieter.
Dieter, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
What is this?
Me and my friend last night were like, what's up?
Hey, Jack.
Basically, we did. Oh yeah.
The reason why it cost me $200 million is friends of mine. I was 22 years old. I spent a year in Seattle, and friends of mine were starting a company with Peter Thiel. Now Peter wasn't sort of the like demigod, billionaire that he is known as today. He actually had just sold PayPal. I knew who he was, but I sort of didn't understand anything about startups. And I said, well, my friends, they're graduating, but they don't have a real job. I have a real job. I might get promoted to level 60 next year. Peter, do you understand? And we were over dinner, and he said, Gary, you're wasting your time. I'm going to make this a zero-risk opportunity for you. And he said he was going to write a $70,000 check for me. Cash this check, quit your job, and we're going to go change the world. And I said, thank you very much, Mr. Thiel, but I might get promoted. I have health insurance, and I got on a plane, and I went back to Seattle. And it was a big mistake. It did actually literally cost me, on the order of, in today's money, probably close to $500 million. And Palantir was like an idea on a napkin at that moment.
You need to either figure out how to get more users or change your idea. And so that's what we did. We pivoted about 4 weeks before demo day. We built this technology that allowed us to take recurring payments, which would have been useful for kind of bill splitting. But it turns out businesses wanted to use this much more than students. For students, it was like a kind of side annoyance, right? It's like, they were running a soccer team on the side, their studies were their main thing. So they couldn't really be bothered to use a new tool. But businesses really, really cared about this thing. They were collecting invoices regularly, they were chasing late payments. It really mattered for the survival of the business. And luckily, we were able to pivot our technology into this use case. And the lesson that I learned, that I'd like to sort of share with you, is that your idea, your vision, what you want to work on, doesn't matter as much as you think it does. Does that make sense? Sort of like it's a starting point. It's where, you start your exploration, but you're searching for what people actually want. Not like your version of how you think the world should work, honestly. The world doesn't really give a shit about what you think the world should do. You're out there exploring, trying to find what people actually want. And the difference is like night and day. When you're building something that you think the world should want, versus when the world actually wants it, you have incredible growth versus no growth. And we're very lucky that we figured this out just before demo day. And this is a guy who helped us, as well as Paul Graham. This guy called Dwayne Jackson. He's kind of an oddball. He was a convicted drug smuggler who went to prison, and while in prison taught himself to code, and then decided on leaving prison he should use his newfound coding ability to build a small business accounting platform. Super weird. And he was like, the problem with small business accounting is collecting invoices sucks. And I really, really want a payment processor that helps me collect the payments when I send the invoice. And for some reason, we couldn't figure it out at the time. No other payment processor wanted to work with him, possibly because he was a convicted drug smuggler. But we were like 24, we're like, yeah, we'll work with you. And it was amazing, just growth sort of took off. And so this was a founding team, Matt, myself, and Hiroki. Hiroki is still running this company 13 years later. It's worth about $2.1 billion. And that started with 3 of us in Hiroki's bedroom trying to build a bill splitting app. So after Go Cardless, I was there about 3 or 4 years. I took a year off to go and work for a dating startup in New York. It was a lot of fun, but not a great business. And I came back to the UK, and in 2014 or 15, decided to start a bank, which just seemed like this crazy, crazy ambitious big idea, to start a bank from scratch, to get a banking license, to build all of the software, all of the technology from scratch, no branches at all, basic bank. Counterintuitively, one of the things I've learned is that doing something really, really hard, once you've like crossed that barrier, you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it, everything else gets easier. Like, especially attracting great people. If you think about the smartest people you know, they want to go and work with other really, really smart, hardworking people. Easy, or seems hard, start another sharing photos of my cat kind of website, or something really, really hard, like building AGI or space rockets or starting a bank. Choosing the harder thing actually makes everything else easier. So this is Monzo. It's UK's leading online bank now. And we started 2015, and we were terrified of waiting. We thought it might take 12 or 18 months to get a banking license. It actually took us 3 years. 3 years of writing about 50,000 pages of documentation, raising tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and hiring a massive team. And I was terrified of waiting 3 years to figure out the most important question as I saw it, which is, can we even get anyone interested? Will customers sign up for this thing in the first place? Sort of, if you build it, they will come kind of mentality has killed so many startups. So thinking back to my YC days, I wanted to prototype a bank. I wanted to see, like, what could we put out there which approximates some of the functionality, not all of it, but might see if people are interested in this thing. And so we figured out we could use a prepaid debit card. And before Monzo, really, the only people who use prepaid debit cards, you might use them as like a store gift card. You might send them as a gift to a child. Maybe your parents might give a nanny one of these things or something. But no mainstream consumer would ever use a prepaid card as their main bank account. And we thought we'd spend $50,000 doing a test of these, get a few hundred or a few thousand prepaid cards out just to see if they worked. In the end, we spent $30 million because 1 million people signed up for these things, with 0 advertising spend. We grew from 0 to 1 million customers in about 2 years with no ad spend, became the most recommended brand in the UK with a net promoter score of like plus 80. It turned out people really did want a new bank, and they were excited to tell all their friends about it. And so by the time we got our banking license in 2018, we already had 1 million customers using the bank. So the lesson here is, if you think you can't launch early, I think there's almost like no example where you cannot. SpaceX's vision is to make life multi-planetary. They didn't start by sending a rocket to Mars. They start by putting stuff into Earth's orbit, right? And probably next putting stuff onto the moon. We sort of do this step by step, iteratively, to work towards your big vision. So I just encourage all of you, when you're thinking about your startup, like what's the smallest thing you can build and launch to like de-risk it, or to figure out the hardest thing, which is normally, does anyone want this thing at all? So after we launched, it felt like a rocket ship. It was crazy. Go-Kart as my first company really was a slog. It took really 5 or 6 years to get any kind of repeat sustainable traction. With Go-Kart, it just felt like a rocket ship, like it was going into orbit, and we were just hanging on for dear life. So this is a picture of card packing. So we had all of the debit cards delivered to our office, and then we put them in paper envelopes and shipped them out. And regularly within the first 6 months, it got to the point on like a Friday afternoon where we'd had so many sign-ups by about 2 p.m. that the team packing the cards couldn't possibly put all the cards into the envelopes by the 5 p.m. post. And so the entire team, me, the CFO, all the engineers, everyone stopped doing what they were doing and just put cards in envelopes. Just crazy, just packing these. I mean, this is what product market fit feels like. Like you're literally restocking the shelves as fast as you can because people are pulling the product off the shelf. I mean, it's also a sign of very bad operations. We should have just got a team to do this and outsourced it, which we did eventually. So this was growing, retention was amazing, the brand was superb, net promoter score was great. But unfortunately, unit economics were really, really poor. So for every card we got out, remember we only thought we'd spend £50,000 on this thing. We hadn't paid attention to how much each card was costing us, because at low volumes it didn't matter. But when you have 1 million of these things, each losing £30 a year, you end up losing £30 million really, really quickly. And we kept scaling, so we grew the team from 350 to 1,000 in a year, and then from 1,000 to 2,000 people. And at peak, I think we were spending about 100 million a year, 120 million a year. And so I was just constantly fundraising. Every 6 to 9 months, I'd be out on a plane, traveling the world, trying to convince people to give us more money. And the job starts to get really, really weird at this scale when you're managing 2,000 people versus being a startup founder. As a startup founder, you're like, you put your weight against a problem and you can solve it. At 2,000 people, really you're picking a priority, 1 or 2, and then standing on stages, talking to teams. You know, I'd go to an office in Cardiff, an office in San Francisco, and talk to teams of hundreds of people to try and explain what the company's priorities were for that year. And so it becomes a job of prioritization and communication. And honestly, I hated it. The earliest stage, it felt like it could put my weight against a problem and like make the problem move. I felt I had an impact. Bizarrely, as a CEO of a 2,000 person company, I didn't feel that anymore. I felt like I wasn't doing real work. You know, I was just kind of performing the whole time. And then things got really hard. So we'd been the kind of golden child of the press in the early days. We got incredible coverage. And as soon as we were big enough, the press started to tear us down. So we got, I think, in any given day, there'd be 3 or 4 articles about Monzo. It ended up causing like death threats. I had to change my phone number, my email address, I had to get my physical address removed from the internet, I had to get physical security. And then COVID hit. I made everything twice as hard again. So revenue halved in 2 weeks. We had a £100 million funding line pulled with 48 hours notice. I had to fire 500 people to save costs. And our financial regulator told it was all over. We had to start preparing to wind down the bank. So I decided I did not enjoy running a 2,000 person bank, and I'd hired a CEO and a COO by this stage who are still running the company today. And I was incredibly lucky. They've done an absolutely amazing job. I left about 3 or 4 years ago when we were making about $100 million a year in revenue. Monzo's now making $1 billion a year in revenue. It's profitable, 3,000 staff. It's the #1 online bank in the UK by a very, very wide margin. But my favorite part of the whole thing, of the entire experience, was working with a small team to build something that people want. And I remember the first time I was out in the wild, I was in a coffee shop. The first time I saw a customer who wasn't like a friend of mine or a team member pull out the Hot Coral Monzo card. They pulled out their wallet to pay for something. And I was like standing in line behind them, kind of anonymous. And the server, the barista, said, "Is that a Monzo card? I've been on the waiting list for one. How is it? I'm really looking forward to getting it." And the customer said, "It's incredible. You have to get one." And I was just standing there going, holy shit. I've made a thing that other people are not only using, but they love. Just like, I'd never felt that before, you know? Like I'd written these academic papers in school and all this kind of shit, and I'm sure all of you have. But to actually build a product that people that you don't know are using every single day and raving about, just like, still today, like gives me goose pimples. It's crazy. So, I want us to wrap up there with one final thought. You can go and get a job like everyone else and be part of a world that someone else has built and follow someone else's rules. Or you can choose to do something different. You can start a company. You can change the world in a small way and create the rules you'll want to live by. Thank you.
Let's welcome Dalton and Michael to the stage.
When I talk to folks like y'all, I want to talk to the builders, the people that are writing software, the builders, and we're dead serious here. And so we try to filter out folks that are like performatively trying to be a part of the startup scene, because they don't tend to do anything interesting. They're just trying to get a resume line item that they had a startup that got into YC, and later on go do something else. We really are looking for builders. And so that's what we're looking at in applications.
So another one we see a lot is some form of hedging. And this might come out as, hey, I'm thinking about working at Google, or maybe getting my PhD, or maybe doing a startup. Like maybe whether I get into YC or not is going to be how I decide what to do with my life. I don't know why you would outsource that decision to us. That seems pretty dumb. Another version of that is like, hey, I'm exploring 7 different startup ideas with like 16 different people, and like whichever one gets traction first, I'm going to work on in some kind of faux scientific method, I guess, for figuring out the right company. Here's the unfortunate truth. It takes a long time to learn something, to learn about your customers, to figure out something that other people don't know. And it's impossible to do that when you're hedging that effort across 3, 4, 5, even 2 different things. And so, whereas hedging probably was one of the best strategies to get you here, it doesn't work as well once you're here. And you might have to go all in on something that takes a year, takes 2 years for you to figure out whether it's working or not. And I think that's something that's like extremely scary to people, but like the alternative path when they hedge, they never win. Yeah. So I guess you could not hedge, spend 2 years, and have a good chance of losing. Yep. Or hedge and always lose. So I don't know the math on that one, but I think it's bad.
Yeah. And I think this is like a quick side point on that. This happens a lot with folks that are considering whether to drop out or not, because I feel like I can tell a difference between someone that very seriously is applying to YC because they want to leave school and they've thought about it a lot, and then people that just kind of like aren't going to drop out unless we fund them. And it's okay. And like, again, let me speak for myself. Folks, I graduated.
Yeah, me too.
Right? We graduated college, so you don't think that performatively thinking you need to drop, like the way you decide whether to drop out is because investors tell you you should. I don't know if that's a great way to live your life. The reason you should be applying while you're still in school is you actually want to be done with school and you're serious about it. And otherwise, it's totally cool to finish school. Like, and having people like us decide whether you should leave school or not. Yeah, don't do that. Don't outsource key life decisions to other people. Beware.
It is funny though, because sometimes you'll meet someone, like I worked with a company Dispatch, where one of the founders at MIT, the other founder was a freshman at UCLA, and talking to them, my first feeling was like, these folks aren't going to make it through school. Like they, one way or another, they ain't doing 4 years of school. And for them, it's like, great, this was a perfect choice for them. I think other people, you know, us included, school was awesome. I would do school again. School was amazing. Another subject that comes up, another thing that we don't like when we see, let's talk about cap tables, complicated, weird cap tables.
Yeah, the way to think about this is starting something from scratch where there's no hair on it and it's a nice blank piece of paper is great. And we love to fund companies as the blankest piece of paper possible. And the opposite of a blank piece of paper is just a really complicated cap table, weird angel investment stuff, weird advisor stuff, former co-founders who left the company. Like, it's weird to have folks with a really complicated cap table, yet no one has ever worked full-time on the company. And so again, seek simplicity. Simplicity is good and is very appealing when reading applications versus very complex situations. Not great.
So another thing that we see, and you pointed this out, is we see the tension young people have between trying to work in technology and trying to work in finance. And oftentimes, the way this appears is some person who applies to YC is technical, but every single one of the jobs they've ever had was like an investment banking or consulting.
It's like a CS undergrad with investment banking or management consulting internships every summer.
Sorry if this is too on the nose. Has anyone here considered an investment banking or perhaps hedge fund trading internship?
They're not going to raise their hand.
They never raised their hand.
Again, we're not saying it's a negative thing. We're just saying the best internships to have are where you're builders building, right? And so internships are great, but you should try to be leveling up builder skills, talking to customer skills, learning from great engineering team skills, things that will help you in your startup, building PowerPoint decks, you know, being someone that's a CS major, but your internships are building PowerPoint decks or like whatever it is that people do at those companies, is probably less useful, so, you know.
You shouldn't need that much practice building PowerPoint decks. Let's do a couple more. So one thing you kind of pointed out is when you read an application that looks like a person's trying to kind of gamify life at YC. Explain that.
This is just some quick life advice, folks. You guys know what growth hacking is? You know what gamification is, right? Like you're playing a video game. Well, modern society has implemented a lot of gamification and growth hacking into the very lives that you've lived. And gamifying things like getting good grades, gamifying like what school you get into, gamifying things like what internships you get, gamifying things like what job you get. So much of your lives have been gamified by people to make you want to level up your character and try to like win. You need to unlearn this shit. This is the system that other people are gamifying and optimizing for, turning you into a drone that will just keep grinding your character with no purpose. You won't find fulfillment if all you do in your life is try to like win every level.
Yes.
And again, I remember
the game as other people design.
I remember when I was in college, there was this whole pecking order of what the high status internships were, what the high status job after school were.
Oh, I'm sure these people have no.
They don't know what I'm talking about, right? This doesn't.
Yeah.
And so, just realize that that's all bullshit. Like people made this up. They're growth hacking you to make you worker bees in someone else's hive. Okay? And so you can see this in applications. You can see this in the way people are living their lives. Is they're just like playing World of Warcraft and they think they're winning. And they're not kind of making their own thoughts. They're not having their own decisions. They're not seeking adventure. They're wanting other people to tell them what to do.
I think one that comes out a lot when I'm reading applications is weird co-founding teams. And it comes with a lot of flavors. You know, the classic one is the business guy that owns 99% of the company and the engineer that owns 1. There's the one where it's this is the more modern version of that, because I think people know that's not good anymore. It's the Harvard Business School or MIT Business School person who's 30 teamed up with the 21-year-old undergrad.
Oh yeah, that's very healthy, very cool.
Yes. They clearly have had a long-standing relationship, like, obviously. There is the 5 to 7 person hackathon team that applies with 7 co-founders, and you're like, oh, that's interesting.
And then they all fight each other. It's like a survival of the fittest who keeps the company.
Yes. There's the team where it's like 2 people are super committed, and it's like often the business person who's like hedging. There'll be like the 3rd person who has like equal equity, but like writes in their thing, I can commit 20 hours a week to this. So let's talk about weird co-founding teams. What do you think?
It's clearly contrived. It's clearly something that won't be stable. It's people that don't know each other well. It's all the things you've heard from us before. And again, this looks so different than folks that have worked together and that are doing it for joy and doing it for love versus trying to feel like this is filling out a YC application, is filling out a job application, and they want to like check all the boxes.
Yeah.
You can tell the difference.
We thought we needed a business person to do startups. It's like,
yeah, I was saying this to someone earlier. The meme that like you need business people to be your co-founders is a meme that is pushed by business co-founders. You know what I'm saying? Like they're putting the word out that you need them.
yes. Well, who else is going to pitch? I haven't even heard of a good company started by just engineers, like other than Google and Facebook. Like,
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right, so let's flip it around. What are the things that we see on YC applications where we're like, oh,
I think it's people that build things and people that launch things, and we can look at their website and we see all these projects you made. We look at your GitHub and we can see all this code that you've written. We can see all the papers that you've written. We can see the weird, arty, quirky stuff that you're doing. These are cool things. Like weird, nerdy shit is good, not bad.
Yeah, one that I see that I often love, and it's not common, but it's really fun to see, is based some version of like, I grew up with this problem, and now I finally get to help solve it. So like 2 that come to mind. One, there's a company we founded where like his dad started like a small convenience store, and he basically grew up working in the convenience store. And went off to college, got a CS degree, and like wants to build software for his dad and people like his dad. And it's amazing because you read the application and it sounds like someone who spent 10 years of their fucking life grinding away at a convenience store and knows everything about why that sucks. Knows everything about why their dad doesn't like buying software.
Yeah.
Like really is actually like takes this person. Another example of this, actually learned from the founder of PillPack. It's this company where you pack together your prescriptions into one pack so it's easier to take your pills. And his story was hilarious. He was like, my dad was a pharmacist and ran a local community pharmacy, and he provided a service for his customers where he would pack together their pills and deliver them in a pack. And all I did was like work in that pharmacy, then grew up, got a CS degree, and did what my dad did. And you're like, oh, and for summers I could go around delivering all of these packs. And like, okay, well you know about this. And I think that sometimes founders have that, sometimes they don't, but when they do, it's always a shame when they kind of like have that kind of life experience and then don't want to do a company in that space. Like, because it's like, oh, like it's too hard, I know how hard it is, versus like, yeah, you know how hard it is. Like, you are going to kill everyone who thinks it's going to be a walk in the park because you know how hard it is. So I love reading those apps, like, oh man, solving a problem that happened in my family growing up, amazing. What else you got?
Here's a little anecdote. This is maybe on the nose for this audience. I often would think about what Mark Zuckerberg was like when he was 19 and how if he applied to YC when he was 19, before YC existed, what his application would look like. And the 2 signals that I think are really outstanding, if we look at him as a case study, was that when he was in high school, he built this music visualization thing for this program called Winamp that has, none of you were alive when it was created, but it was like this music player, like MP3 player, and he built these visualizations when he was like 15 or 16, and he made a bunch of money just like doing things for love, doing visualization. And that's like a powerful signal of a builder. And then he built something, I think when he was like a freshman, for the hell of it, for fun, and got 99% of the other students at his university to use it. Like he launched things and people liked it. And he didn't think it was a business. He wasn't doing it to raise venture capital. Like he's just doing something for the hell of it and it got really popular. Do you all see what I'm saying? Like doing things just because and not to try to pass the test is like a really powerful signal on good motivations to build things. That's green light on a YC hub.
It's like the opposite of just trying to figure out what idea will VCs fund.
Yes.
Yeah, the exact opposite of that. Another great sign is when you can explain, or when it's obvious in your application, that you like your users. It's strange, this is counterintuitive, and like I'll say this personally, there's a long period of time in my startup where we did not like our users, and lo and behold, we didn't serve them well. But one of the things I've noticed is founders have a secret superpower when they actually like their users and care about whether their users do really well. And I remember that in the second kind of phase of my startup at Twitch, one of the things that became very clear is that if we work with these streamers, they would be able to quit their jobs, stream full time, make enough money that they make more money than their jobs. And we would talk to streamers who could buy a house for their mom, like help out someone with medical bills. Like literally it was a life-changing thing. If you're working on a startup where you can actually make someone's life better, your motivation to keep working on it when shit gets tough is really high. If you're working on a startup where you think it's a good idea because investors think it's a good idea, but secretly you just don't give a shit about your users, when shit gets tough, you don't even like your users. Like, why are you gonna keep helping them? And so like one way you can kind of like hack yourself is why not build a startup to help people who you like, who you want to see do well. You know, if you get to choose, which you do, why not make something that you're gonna actually really enjoy when it's successful and your users get value out of it. So that's when you see an app, you're like,
and I think that dovetails into this big theme, which is people that do great work are having fun. Yes. And that we want to fund people that are doing this for love and that are having fun and are building things and like seeking self-actualization or sharing their gift with the world, whatever their gift is. And like they have a smile on their face versus the folks that really struggle are the people that are afraid. They're afraid of failing, they're afraid of judgment, they're afraid of not getting into YC, they're afraid of ruining their careers. And again, I'm just telling you, don't live your life because of fear. Don't let fear be the thing in your mind that is driving all of the decisions you're making in life. You all could do anything you want in the world. You are so leveraged right now to do anything. And so the things that you choose to spend your time on should be things that bring you joy and bring you meaning, and not trying to make the fear monkey get off your back that's freaking you out, okay?
All right, I think the next one that I really like, let's talk about excellence. And we talk about this in the context of the YC batch a lot, where we say, hey look, like, even though we accept a small number of applicants, and the people getting to YC are very smart, very hardworking, it's still the case that like, in a typical batch, what, 5 to 10 companies will go on to become billion-dollar companies. And so most people, it won't work. And one of the things we tell people is if you know that the average YC company isn't going to become a billion-dollar company, why are you trying to be average? Like, why do you tell us, well, I talked to 5 people in my batch and I'm doing the average of what they're doing? Now, I think this is tricky because, at least my experience with school was, I put myself amongst the smart people in the AP classes, and I did the average of what they did, and I got into an Ivy. So man, that worked in the real world. But talk about this in the context of startups.
I think basing yourself based on your neighbor or other people that you randomly know at your school or what have you is a rough thing to do. And you should just seek your own truth. Seek the best and have the best product and ship the fastest. I guess to kind of wrap this up, I think we're at the end of my goal. I just want to say to everybody something that someone said to me in one of my CS classes at Stanford. It was like internet programming, and this was in like 2000. My professor told me, he told the whole class, it was a group of people just like this,
you all are going to create the future of the internet. And if you're sitting in this classroom, everything that happens with the internet is going to be built by you. And so I know you can do it, and whatever, I look forward to see the future that you're going to build. And he was right, because I know a bunch of people in my class started a lot of great companies. And so to reflect that back to you all, maybe you all won't be founders, I don't know what you all do, but I can tell you confidently that you all are going to create the future, and you're going to create the future of technology. Basically the world is your oyster.
And we're here to help. With that, thank you so much. Cheers.
And then it's like, why should I invest that energy in your platform versus other platforms that give me that 0.1% chance? And it doesn't have to be 10%, right? Because usually these streamers are failing on other platforms, right? And usually what you're doing is saying, here's a new way that you can maybe be a winner here. Like you're losing on YouTube and on TikTok, but you could win here. But if you can't win here,
yeah.